It takes a while because you got to go to lots of different places.
Okay. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. This is the Asheville-Buncombe Air Quality Agency Board of Directors meeting for February 3rd, and this is an actual makeup meeting for the meeting we had to cancel last week because of the storm, and then we got another storm. So hopefully everybody made it through okay, and we're here to have our meeting that was originally scheduled last week. I'll read the public comment protocol announcement as a starting point. Public comment will be taken at the end of each board meeting. Persons wanting to address the board should sign up on the sheet provided, and that's over there on the table. Speakers will be called up in the order they are signed up. Comments should be limited to specific topics relevant to the board. At the board's discretion, limited comment may be allowed on individual agenda items during the course of the meeting as invited by the chair. And finally, all board meetings shall be recorded, including public comment periods. So here you have that. I'll entertain a motion to either adjust or approve the agenda that we have today. Motion to approve by Gary. Second by Ned. Anybody have anything to add to the agenda? If not, everybody in favor of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We got an agenda going. Okay, third item is introductions. We've got a new legal counsel. Welcome, Suzanne Avid, and she's here at our first meeting, and I'd like to give her the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I am new to the county attorney's office. Just started just before the first of the year, and kind of some of the shifting and reshifting. I've replaced Amy advising this board. I am new to this position, but I'm not new to the county. I've been the attorney for the Department of Health and Human Services for the past 18 years.
Okay.
Hopefully some of that experience will help me out.
Welcome aboard. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Also like to identify some other guests we have in the audience. Tim Love, Assistant County Manager. We've got Sam Riddle, Budget Analyst. Glenn Murray from the Finance Department. And, of course, one of our normal guests, Patty Beaver with SIBO. So welcome, guys. Only item on our consent agenda is the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting last year on November 20th, 2025. If you've had a chance to review those, I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Moved by Ned. Second by Caitlin. Anybody have any comments about those minutes? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We approve those minutes. Got a pretty abbreviated agenda today. No unfinished business, and I'll at this point turn it over to Ashley for the director's report. Got several items on that.
Okay, thanks, Joel. First item is the Buncombe County Reduce to Rebuild program. That's the one that the board participated in last year that seeks to reduce fees for residential permits for those affected by Helene. And we did adopt a fee change in our rules to reduce certain permit fees, the demolitions and asbestos removals for those that qualify under the program by 50%. I think that ran from June through December of last year. And we went through rulemaking as we always do whenever we have a fee change. So the county has decided to extend that program until June the 30th, 2026. And they have asked us to do the same. So there were some additional slides in the packet that included the presentation that they gave to the commissioners, and they had one specific to air quality. The difference in this program is instead of a 50% reduction, they're asking for just completely waiving the fees for this certain subset. And they did provide us with some data from last year, and that is we had 169 applications during that 6-month period. 33 of them met the criteria. They all have to be reviewed for the criteria, and overall it was $1,200 in revenue that was not collected. So we think that the impact is pretty minimal, and we would like to suggest to the board that we recommend doing that again, extending that. So what we've done in the proposal is instead of putting that sunset date in our rules, we would just like to make a general statement that to reference the Buncombe County Reduced to Rebuild program. And then the idea would be if the county extends this again, then we would not have to go through a rulemaking again. So right now we're back to charging 100% of the fees because it takes us longer. Air agencies are required to go through a 30-day public comment period, whereas the county commissioners can put out the notice and adopt fee changes a little quicker. So they've already moved ahead. And if the board decides they want to participate again, then what we would do is we would issue a 30-day public comment period here in the next week or so. And then the March board meeting, if we can get, I think we will have 30 days. The March board meeting would be when we would come back and have any public comments, and that's when it could be voted on and adopted if the board chooses to do so.
So do we need to take any action now or just
I
kind of
think
tentatively agree that we're in favor of that?
I think we would need to vote if whether or not you want us to move forward and go to public notice.
And would you issue refunds for any permits that were issued for January 1st or?
No. No, we won't. No, we do kind of keep an eye on that. And if we have someone that applies and that looks like they're qualified, then we would tell them, hey, if you want to wait till next month, you might not have to pay. In a lot of cases, it's the $200 demolition fee that we're seeing with these. Is that right, Alex? And so typically they could make a decision if they want to wait, if we think it's something that. Have we had many lately or?
Not as many as they used to be.
Okay.
Do you need a motion? Is that what you need?
Sounds like we need a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Motion to consider, what would the language be?
To go to public notice.
On extending the Reduce to Rebuild program. And that would be contingent on the county deciding to extend it as well, right?
They've already extended it.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. Okay.
They did it back in January, I believe.
All right.
But you'll write it this time to where it's just tied to the sunset the county has.
Yes.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Second.
Yeah, Carl already got you on that. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The public notice.
Okay, thanks. The next item is rule updates. I don't have a lot of updates there. We talked about 6 different groups of rules that we are, Allison has drafted the changes. We've got 3 groups of rules on the website still. I was hoping to have made more progress. I am almost finished with group 4. Some of the ones that I'm working on now are ones that we have that are different from the state, so it's taken me a little longer, but we do still have the first 3 groups on the board SharePoint site for the board to review and following up with the state to see if they've had a chance. They're reviewing them at the same time. Haven't received any feedback from them yet. So again, hopefully by March, I've got some more time now to work on those, hoping to have the rest of those up on the board SharePoint by then.
So maybe at the March meeting, we'll.
Hopefully I'll have more of an update then.
Okay. All right.
So the next item is just review program data, and this is something that I've been getting some help from Allison and Hannah on, and so this is the kind of statistics that we typically track every year for our program that we're required to track for the Environmental Management Commission, things about how many permits we issue. Oops, there we go. So this was in the packet, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I know you can't really see the charts on the screen here, but we did put some tables in here, which is just based on this data, and this goes back to 2018 or so, and basically just shows, I'm sorry, let me catch up on my screen here. Basically, this shows the number of permits we issued. We've got, it's probably easier. Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding it here. Here we go. So number of facilities, you can see that's been pretty steady. Have data on number of operating, construction, and modification permits by category. Some years we have a lot of renewals and some years we don't. We have some different renewal cycles. So again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just wanted to go through it really quickly. Number of full compliance evaluations. You can see in 2024, we did not have many of those. That was after Helene. We did not get our 150 gas stations inspected that year. We typically do that in the fall. Also have some statistics on the asbestos permitting program. That includes demolition permits and asbestos removals. You can see those are up somewhat in 2024. We don't have 2025 up here yet. Number of complaint investigations, that's been pretty steady. I think we probably had more in 2025. Open burning is the one that we have the most of. Number of NOVs by type. Also have enforcement cases and penalties processed. If you look at the tables, that's really a better way to look at that data. It shows how many total amount of civil penalties versus what we collected. And just keep in mind that it's really not apples to apples, because lots of times we will collect penalties from a previous year and it kind of rolls over. We track everything by the calendar year. So also this is something that we like to share with our regulated industry folks. We have 70 permitted facilities plus 150 gas stations. These are the most common NOVs that we get, things like late reports, other various late reports, failure to maintain equipment to minimize emissions. That's a permit condition. That's something that we can track when we permit more sources than the state does, and we have a little bit better. That is a permit condition, again, not a specific rule. Failure to conduct stack tests, failed stack tests, and failure to conduct required monitoring. So,
Do you use notice of deficiency or just NOVs?
we do. That was something that the legislature mandated a few years ago. They wanted us to do notices of deficiency in addition to notices of violations for certain things like paperwork violations. And so the state started doing that, and we did as well. So we are still doing that.
Okay. Do you use many of those, or is it mostly NOVs when you do follow-up enforcement actions?
We do have a fair amount of NODs and we do track NODs versus NOVs. In these graphs, we just put the NOVs, but that is something that we can break down so that you can see. We probably have more notices of deficiency because the majority are just first-time late reports and things like that.
Okay. That's fine. Thanks.
So, but that is something in the future we can break it down so you can see that a little more specifically. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Or all right, so the next thing, this was end of year recap. The county just wrapped up their strategic plan, and so they do a 5-year strategic plan every year, and we're part of that process. So they were looking back at the last 5-year plan and accomplishments, and we were providing this kind of data for their reports for the commissioners. So I just wanted to share with the board that we've accomplished a lot in the last 5 years and really proud of our team. I think the biggest one that we wanted to highlight, and I'll go through this very quickly, was that in 2024, we completed a reorganization of the agency, including 2 senior staff retiring, filling a vacant position, hiring new staff members, and we redid a lot of the actual position descriptions and the whole org chart. So that was something we worked on for 2 or 3 years regularly. So that I felt like that was a great accomplishment. And then these other goals are goals that the commissioners have, where we try to align our goals under our business plans. So things like this goal 2 is improving customer service and efficiency. So we did begin taking electronic payments for asbestos removal and demolition permits. We now have a air quality complaint module, more modern data system, working on that still, expanding that. We did get some grant funds from EPA to upgrade our monitoring equipment. and also worked with the county risk management, moving the monitoring site from the roof to the ground. That was something that was a huge upgrade. Doing the low-cost air quality sensor, doing post-Hurricane Helene monitoring, and giving away free radon test kits. Also worked on some grants for electric vehicle infrastructure, helped the schools get an award for 4 electric school buses, which they don't have yet. And then also worked on the energy efficiency program for the breweries. And, yeah, so that was quick.
It's still a lot, though.
Yeah, I think we've done a lot. So I'm really proud of our team. And the next item I have is budget year FY26 update. So as you know, we are in FY26 now, a little more than halfway through. And I wanted to let the board know that we do have a contingency fund in the budget for unexpected repairs and things that come up. And it's $15,000 we've been budgeting for every year. We did just have to pull about $8,600 or so out of that contingency fund for a monitoring equipment repair that was unexpected. So the way we adopted the budget, we were able to transfer that. But I wanted to let the board know that we did that recently.
And that's an improvement over past years where we didn't have that contingency fund and we had to take action to
Right.
move funds around. So that's
In the past,
lot
we
easier.
had the budget ordinance was very detailed. So we had everything broken down by the different categories. And so we would have had to have the board vote to move one item over. But in this case, we have services and supplies kind of all lumped together so we can move things around between the categories if we need to. But I do want to let the board know when we do something like that, when it's significant.
You track that monthly, your planned cash flow versus budget. How do you do that? You understand the question?
Is it? I don't know if it would be monthly.
Okay, you have a budget, assume you have some cash flow plan, so you'll know where you are versus budget. So you do that monthly, every 2 months, or how do you track, I'm on budget or I'm not on budget?
Well, we're constantly monitoring that, and it's by the budget year, but since we have our budget guru, Sam, here, maybe he can help us with that.
We're always tracking it monthly. It's a little less concerned with the cash flow piece, more just the full amounts appropriate for the year. So where are we?
Basically, you have a spend plan, and then you track it month to month. Are we on plan or not on plan?
Right, but that can also vary, right? So let's say that you've got a bunch of travel and training in the spring. Well, then you might not use that until the spring. So at halfway through the year, half of that budget might not.
Okay, thanks.
Well, and I don't think our income is consistent month to month. I know in stage one, they'll all get paid here in one fell swoop. And so same thing with the other permits. They're not on a monthly or a schedule, if you will, payment plan.
Yeah, I got a question for you. What monitoring equipment needed fixing?
It was the BAM, PM 2.5, and I'll let Steve, do you want to?
So we have a instrument that we operate and then we have a spare. And part of the cycle we do every year, if we do a background test, and it's easier to do that in the lab. So when I took the new instrument out that we just done the lab work on, it ran for about 3 weeks and then it just failed. And so fortunately, that's why we have spares. But we didn't lose any data. We were able to put the other one back in. But we wanted to get that spare repaired so when another incident happened, we were prepared. So. And it was a little more in depth, it took them a while to diagnose the problem. And so, part of that cost was diagnosis fees, the diagnostic fees, it took them more time to figure out the problem. Did that answer your question.
Okay, so the other part of the FY26 budget update is the EPA grants that we receive. The FY26 EPA grant allocation was just approved by Congress and signed by the President on January 23rd. It does include air quality funding for the state and local air agencies at slightly higher level than before. It's not much more. It's less than 0.5% more, so we don't really we expect level funding. So that was good news, and that those funds are ones that we typically by now would receive a partial award. We should be getting a partial award soon, and we typically draw those down at the beginning of our fiscal year FY27, which would be July 1. EPA's fiscal year runs until October 1st. So that was good news for the budget. We've been waiting for.
And the number was on track with what you had put in the budget for that time frame.
Yes. Yay. We were particularly worried this year because the president's skinny budget had zeroed out our funding. And so we weren't quite sure what was going to happen. So we were really pleased that we were able to get that full amount. And other than that, I just have the Radon Awareness Month that was in January, and we did put in the budget and purchase 100 free radon test kits. We're still giving those away, so that's been extended as long as we still have radon test kits. So Buncombe County Environmental Health is handing those out for us, and we still have quite a few left if anybody wants one. And the next item that I have is the monitoring update, and that would be Steve.
So I just put a couple slides together here, updating the design values for ozone to include last year. We're pretty steady there, 60 again. The 2.5 on the next slide, slight uptick, but really pretty steady the last 3 years. So I don't know what's going to happen with the standard with the 2.5. There's, the deadline when they're supposed to.
Next, it's this week, right?
So, okay.
The 7th. So we don't know.
And I've not been hearing anything like what people are expecting. So I don't know.
Right. So the current standard was changed to 9, which is what you're showing on the red line, right? But the current administration is challenging. When the previous administration changed the standard from 12 to 9, the current administration is challenging that, and they're waiting for the court to rule. And so technically, the EPA is supposed to make final designations for attainment for PM 2.5 on the 9th, but we don't know what's going to happen. So we think that they will just let the date pass and nothing will happen, and they're going to wait for the court case to make a determination is what we think is going to happen. But
well, the good news is for the standard, we're in good shape. So we're well below for our county. Also have some completeness numbers for 2025. The ozone day completeness was 93.76, and the PM 2.5 completeness was 97.71. So having the spare instrument enables us to, to have good completeness for this year, so we wouldn't lose hardly any data. As she mentioned earlier, as I actually mentioned earlier, the workshop, we're supposed to be there tomorrow. I was supposed to head that today, but they're making that virtual now. So I am going down to Raleigh later in the week, though, to pick up our equipment that the ECB is certifying for us, the ozone equipment. So and really fortunate that they do that for us every year. Otherwise, that would be interesting. Let's see. So, switching gears, talk about the AV Tech site. The MOU was completed with the state. I don't know if we mentioned that last time. But, also, the addendum went to public notice. The addendum for the what was it again? I forgot exactly.
We had to justify the site, the second ozone site, why the AV Tech site was sufficient when we already
Right.
had one at Bent Creek, that EPA wanted to see more of a case on that.
So that window for public notice is passed, so I don't think they got any comments. And, they're going to send it right away, if they haven't sent it already to EPA. So, and they've been in communications with them, so I think this is they're aware of the change, and so I think it's going pretty smoothly. Expect to hear something very quickly. And did you want to say anything about? Are we going to move forward now? Is that the plan with the pad and since the funding secured?
Yes, so we currently have asked the county, we're working with the county and AV Tech, and that we have an agreement with them. And so we were sort of waiting until the end of January because we wanted to make sure that we would get our EPA funding this year before we move forward purchasing the monitoring equipment for the new site. So we have asked the county that we would like to proceed on and get the pad poured and the electrical put in so that we'll be ready to site the building in March or so whenever the state has it. Fortunately, as we mentioned before, the state is going to let us use a brand new building of theirs, which is going to save us probably $40,000 or so.
About 80.
More like 80. Okay. So it's really a great arrangement. So we're hoping, there was a delay because of the government shutdown and not knowing about the funding. And so we won't have it up and running by ozone season in March of this year like we would have liked, but we have committed to get it up and running sometime this year, right? So
I think the state is shooting for May to deliver the building. That's tentative, but we'll get the ozone going, and then as soon as the building's delivered with ozone, when they're going to bring the toxics monitor, probably later that month, and we'll get a complete year, but we'll be able to begin running that toxics monitor again. So, but that's all I have for monitoring, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, question. I can see the air quality forecast every day, and it looks like it's mostly yellow. And it looks like it's driven by PM 2.5. Can you tell me, is that good, not good? Because we're hardly ever anything but yellow, and I mean, it looks like perfect days. So I'm confused as to, the value of the forecast.
One thing that's driven that to be more yellow is when they dropped the standard, the scale shifted. So what used to be considered green is now considered.
For 2.5.
Exactly. So,
So meaning that like a couple of years ago when it was a higher standard, that might have been a green day.
right.
Yeah.
I see.
So is the red line, is that the standard, or what is the standard
Yes,
now?
the standard is 9, and it's that red horizontal line. On the right-hand
Yeah, the
side.
one, the short one.
it was finalized in 2024, is that, or no, 2023, or I can't remember. But that's the reason the line at the top is different places is because the standard has changed.
Right.
3 different standards showing.
Yeah.
It used to be 15, and then they dropped it to 12. And then a couple of years ago, I don't remember like exactly when, but it changed to 9. But it could be going back to.
It looks like we're well below the standard, so I'm always confused. I get this notice
Well,
every day, and I'm like, I don't understand how we're always in the yellow.
To be orange, I don't really know. Do you know the comparative concentrations, James, for the
Yeah.
AQI?
I mean,
I was trying to look at it, but I mean, the yellow green is the biggest jump. So,
but we're always in yellow. I'm like, well, what's the value here?
I mean, the value they're saying, I mean, this is, and it's also, if you have just like a weather forecast, an air quality forecast has to be prohibitively slightly conservative. So they don't want to call it a green day and then it be a yellow day. So that's one thing, you know. And then the other thing is we had a headroom of 12, and now that's dropped to 9. And with that 3 microgram drop, I think we had run the numbers one time, was going to increase our yellow days by, and I have to go back and look, but my rough thought in my head was about 60 extra days of a year.
Okay.
that we
Like,
were gonna
well,
have yellow
I'm looking at
forecast. That was when
the blue
our air
line. I
quality
see it
was
well
changing.
under the red, and that was a little confusing when I first saw
That's
this.
our average, and we still typically are under that. Like,
Yeah.
so we might get forecast yellow for a day, but we still will verify for green that day at
Okay.
the end of the day. But if it's a greens and 8, you know, and they forecast it, it could be above 9. You know, if that forecast is getting close enough to yellow, they're going to call it a yellow day.
And I assume this comes from DAQ. Is that where this is
Yes.
generated from?
Yeah, they're the ones that do the forecasting.
Okay,
So
thanks.
the typical action days are orange days, so you're not really, they're not going to make any changes to habits, you know, unless, what is it, sensitive groups, yellow,
Unusually sensitive,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
so, you know, people with asthma and emphysema.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately, we don't see many of those.
And we haven't even seen, I don't think, the difference in forecasting orange days when, even
Right.
though the standard went down to 9, they also dropped what they would forecast an orange day to. I was trying to look it up on my phone. I could find that, but that also dropped. But because our air quality is so good, we're still not even hitting that dropped level of a forecast orange. So unless there's like wildfires, Canadian wildfires or something like that, I haven't seen like a normal just forecast orange day unless there's something weird going on.
Yeah.
Probably 4
Okay.
or 5 years. I don't know. Maybe
I
more.
think the
James?
wildfires were the last orange we had.
Where is the input data coming from that goes into their models? I assume it's NC State that's actually doing this for DAQ. And I don't think there are that many data spots around here that would feed the model.
Well, okay, because you're kind of like, there's 2 things. So, I mean, part of air quality modeling, and I'm not an air quality modeler, so a little asterisk there, but, you know, North Carolina DAQ does have in-house air quality modelers. They are meteorologists. I mean, a lot of this stuff is based off of
Yeah.
meteorology. And meteorology, I mean, I don't go into that, but you know as well. So a lot of it, so it's still meteorologically based to an extent. But we do have actually, I mean, as far as the PM network, I would say it's more robust than the upper air network, for instance. I mean, you're getting PM data from Hickory, from Charlotte, from Bryson City, from Asheville, Spruce Pine. There's several places. So I would say that our PM network that they're basing that forecasting on is a little better than, say, like you're talking about upper air, you know, soundings where you're only out Greensboro and Atlanta.
But basically, there are 1 or 2 stations for a huge area.
Well, I think to some degree they look at purple airs. as
Yes.
well.
And yeah, you have
They
to have
are.
the purple air is even a much
And that's-
better than
They are
just-
using the purple airs now.
They're
Are they?
ubiquitous. I mean, they're everywhere. So
So yeah, Buncombe County, we've got ours plus probably some private citizens. There's probably 15 or 20 purple air systems in Buncombe County. You know, not quite as you know, as you get more sparse in population, you're seeing less of that. But I think, you know, you can do sort of interpolations as well. I mean, if Bryson City and us have kind of the same thing, they're going to interpret that between Bryson City and us, PM is probably roughly about the same.
Well, I go along with what Gary said. It's always yellow.
The challenging thing is that we're having a lot of yellow days now since the standard changed. And then if the standard gets changed back to what it was before,
It'd be
suddenly
great.
we'll have more green days, and we'll have to explain to our residents that, well, it's not that air quality is necessarily better all of a sudden. It's just the standard change. So that's always challenging whenever they change the standard.
I mean, if you look at the graph, our PM hasn't changed. Our PM's roughly been the same since 2018.
I think it's also important. I mean, we show those visual photos of the mountains and how air quality has actually improved over the last 20 years. That's something the agency's very
Well,
proud
I think
of.
that's
and you
something
can
that
see that in the
confuses
numbers.
people. They see yellow every
Yeah.
day, and you know the visual perspective is it's a lot better, but we're still yellow. So it doesn't. We can move on. I'm just curious as to what the inputs were that,
The bottom line is our air quality isn't any different.
yeah.
It is just a matter of what number that you guys determine.
Thanks.
All right, ready to move on to, go ahead, Steve.
I just said, did anybody have any other questions?
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thanks Ashley and Steve. We've got a couple of permit modifications today. First one for Pratt and Whitney. It's a small facility. Who was staff's going to present that? James?
I can speak briefly on that. It's as a newer facility, they're constantly realizing they have to slightly change things on their permit. This was, they've removed the afterburner on some furnaces. I mean, as they're developing these things, they're testing them out. They added a wax injection machine, which they were already permitted, I think, for 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken, Alley. Pretty much identical to other equipment they have. They added a nitrite spray booth. When you look at the total emissions, new versus old on this, it was very minimal, maybe total, and maybe not even a ton. And I'm talking about potentials, actual would be even less than that. So overall, just a couple of equipment changes and just a very small amount of increase in emissions. They did get a zoning consistency determination, which is required, and it's called an expansion, although you could define whether or not this is expansion, where we usually say if there's any increase in emissions at all, it's not like they're expanding the plant, it's just they're changing configuration.
Questions?
Move to approve the facility permit modification for RTX Corporation Pratt & Whitney.
Second.
Second, moved by Carl, second by Ned. Any other questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And the second one is the Biltmore Company. It's a wood waste management permit, their air curtain burner. James?
Yeah, I think I'll go into less detail this time about this than last time, but we approved one last time. There's since lean companies have realized they'd love to burn some of their waste as opposed to chipping it or getting rid of it. So the Biltmore initially did apply to burn some storm waste because they have a lot of trees down on their property. When EPA approved the use of those ACIs to burn storm debris, so they did not need a permit at that time. Now they want to keep the ACI on site and use it for their own wood waste management. So it's, I'll say they've got plenty of land there. This is and the main location for this burner was crow flies maybe half a mile or so from 40 south of 40, but it's just right. There's no residents near there. I mean, I did the air quality modeling on it. There was very little impact on, when you do air quality modeling, you do it at fence line. They've got such a large fence line that it took me a while to figure out how to do modeling on just a giant piece of land because I couldn't start actually doing the modeling until those air masses reached off of Biltmore property. But the air modeling was fine on it. I don't think you have any concerns about either that or citizen complaints because it's just so far away.
So it's site specific. It's not anywhere on the estate. They won't be moving it.
They originally wanted to move it they possibly wanted to move it to 3 different places. They have settled on one. If they do end up moving it, I'll just have to do some more air modeling for it, but it'll still be permitted. If they operate at any one place less than 12 months, they don't need to do any air modeling at all. It's considered temporary at that site. So this is their main site, which is why you model it for them.
So this will be a permanent facility for them?
Yes.
At the ready if they need it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was on the Biltmore Estate, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and man, they've got a lot of debris on the ground, so I can understand the need for it. Any questions?
We'll have one more of these. We have we have a third application in-house, and those are the only 3 that we know of. So this is the second one.
Okay, so we might have one next meeting. Move to approve?
So moved.
Ned? Second by Caitlin. Any questions? Comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Okay, new business. So we put an item here called financial update, statement of net position. And as Ashley mentioned earlier, we're getting ready to go into our budget season. And that's always an interesting exercise for us because there's always a lot of uncertainties with the EPA grants and with the revenues and the permits. I know we adjusted the permit fees a couple of years ago, which really helped. But we've always kind of felt like we had a safety net with this capital net position, and you all have got a handout in front of you that shows the financials for the Asheville-Buncombe Air Quality Agency, and there at the top is that $713,000 number, which is our unrestricted cash reserve, and
It's what we commonly call a fund balance.
fund balance, yes, cash reserve fund balance. So that fund balance has always kind of served us well because it's kept us, from going negative. But in talking to the financial folks with the county, and that's why I've invited them here today, it turns out that as an agency, our retirees are obligated to get their health insurance paid for and their pension paid for, and so that's a cash outlay every year, and that's got to come out of our finances. And so that cash reserve, if you played it on out with all the folks that are retired to the end, that cash reserve would fall down to $27,000, which is what you see at the end. Now, obviously, that doesn't go away all at one time, but we have to account for that. And so I felt like, since that's kind of a somewhat new information for this board, I felt like, letting the finance folks come, which I introduced earlier. And of course, Tim, one of the assistant managers, is here too. And in case the board has any questions about how that came to be and what comes next, what we ought to be doing about it. So I'm going to open it up to any questions you guys might have, or maybe comments from Tim as well. So
I got one question. Is it cheaper to hire back the ones that have retired?
that's a good question, man.
Yeah, we've always viewed this fund balance as funds that are available to spend if we need it. Is that really the case, or is that not the case? Because I see the 713 number, but then I also see the 27,687. So which is the dollar number which is available to be able to use? Because I noticed when we do our budgeting, every year we'll use part of that fund balance as a bogey to make the budget. So is that appropriate to do or not?
Appreciate the question. And again, Tim Love, it's good to be with y'all today. I've got Glenn and Sam with us, and so they'll provide some support as we need it. The short answer, and just quick, I'm not an accountant. I'm not pretending to be. That amount that you have, that 713, it turns out there's a restricted future use. And so there's future liabilities that needs to sort of be restricted for. And so, as Joel said, there's not, you wouldn't see that $700,000 get spent all at once, but over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you may see that liability get realized. And so, short answer to your question is it isn't fund balance. And so we can't just view it just as cash, because it does have another purpose that is in the future. I think realistically, if we're thinking about an organization and they're managing operations, you're going to take care of immediate expenses before you're going to start thinking about future liabilities. And so I think that's a natural thing that was occurring. I don't think anyone's done anything wrong. I don't think you're in the red, to be sort of more casual with my language. But there is no doubt there is a future liability that must be accounted for, and that's what happened when we looked at the statement of net position.
So is it appropriate to utilize any of those funds in the budgeting process? I think we had like 193 in this current budget year. That's kind of a bogey we put in there from the fund balance if we needed it. So is it appropriate to budget that way and use that fund balance, some of that in that budget process, or is it really protected and you shouldn't use it in the budgeting process?
You really shouldn't. as as an independent entity. I mean, when I say that, you shouldn't to some extent, right? When we did the statement in that position, there was a balance that remained closer to that $27,000, which has been referenced. And so in theory, that amount is free. It hasn't been, doesn't have a future use per se.
Yeah.
However, it's a balance as well. And so I think we got to recognize current expenses versus future liabilities. And so to some extent, there might be a need to use that for that purpose, but it's not a good practice overall to dip too deeply into that.
Okay.
Okay, I got a question. Since this is supposedly a city-county independent agency, what is the city's role, which also wants to do away with all boards and commissions? But, does the city have any input into the budgeting or whatever, giving funds?
Sure. I appreciate the question, and cannot speak on behalf of the city. I know that Ashley and Joel certainly have had conversations with city officials in the past, but not privy to that and their thinking and their priorities.
So in other words, the city hadn't done anything with the county, with us,
Not
at least not officially.
Not in any current, not since I've been on the team. So.
Do you have these extrapolated numbers? You talk about future liabilities. I think looking at it, we're talking about when a retiree goes on Medicare, then they come off our health plan. We've got retirement. I'm sure you're working actuarial tables as to how long what is this looking at? This 27,000, is that 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And
It is.
what are you looking at rate of return? Because hopefully these funds are not just dormant out there. They're creating some income on their own.
Right. It's very complicated, but I'll try to do my best to explain it. A good way to look at it is, let's take pension liability to start. The state actually holds all that money. They're the ones that pay out the retirement. What that is that number for the pension is our liability of the state's, our portion of the state's entire liability. I don't know how they figure it out. They do actuarial tables on their own. Those are funded by payroll payments over time. So it's not like we're supposed to fund X amount every single year to make sure that liability is paid off. We are only responsible for the employee. Well, the employee is actually responsible for part of it, and then the employer is responsible for another part. Depending on how well it's funded versus underfunded, the state does occasionally increase the employer's portion of that over time, but that is essentially how it's funded. I don't want to say that it's not fair to look at it like it's something we have to pay, because in the end, we don't have to pay that money. What we're required to do is show, if we had to pay it today, what would that amount be? Another good example would be compensated absences is another one that air quality has to report on. What that is the value of all of the staff at the end of the year, how much vacation type hours that they have available, and what portion of that, if they were to terminate, we have to pay out at that time. So it's another sort of hard to predict number, but that one is actually more tangible, because if you know somebody's going to leave in the next year, then it's more likely you're going to have to pay out all of their vacation time all at once. Last one is OPEB. Those are the health insurance benefits that we pay. That is another. It's another thing that's held in a trust that does earn interest. Again, it's typically funded through. Right now, the county pays it directly, but those costs are reported throughout the year. So if we're making payments, it's hard for me to comment on the air quality portion because I'm not aware of whether or not anybody currently is on that. But typically for the county, what we do is we pay those expenses during the year, and that's sort of how we fund it. The funding is done by paying current expenses and letting what's already in the trust earn interest to kind of self-support itself.
Okay, so then that 700-odd thousand doesn't really exist in terms of cash.
Usable money.
Don't want to say that, but
In other words, that's a figure that the county says, if we had to pay, this is what it would be.
right.
But you don't actually pay it because the payment essentially comes from the state trust funds, however they invest it or do whatever with it, and then pay the retirement and health insurance and all that. Okay, where did that 700,000 come from? Let's say 10 years ago, before the current or whenever the current accounting system started. Was this actually cold hard cash coming into the agency at some point? Maybe some of those who have more experience can answer that. I don't know. The number came from somewhere, and
Are you asking where did the fund balance originate?
yeah,
So that's kind of hard to answer. Some of those numbers have always been there. The pension numbers, though, did only have to be reported about 10 years ago. I forget what year that came out, but it was the GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, came out with, they issued a statement that said they thought for transparency purposes, it was important for governments to report their portion of a liability, even if they weren't the ones paying it at the end of the life cycle. So even though we're not the ones paying out retirement benefits, they thought it was important for us to show if we had to pay it all at once, what is that number at the end?
Right.
So that was one of those numbers that kind of showed up 10 years ago. That wasn't there.
yeah. Well, I'm just curious as to how much cold hard cash the agency had in the past that was a fund balance rather than the liability funny money number, wherever it came from. I just wonder, was the agency operating in the black in terms of inflow, outflow at any time in the past?
I think the answer to that, though, is, there's some years we were in the black and we added to this fund balance or cash reserve.
So,
right?
so it was actually money that the agency
We were
had at
profitable,
one
I guess.
point.
then.
Yeah.
We've cleaned up the air too much, is what the problem.
That's a good point. Yeah, the tonnage fees that we used to enjoy collecting that actually made us in the black so much, they're down. Yeah.
So in other words, we got to get Duke Power to have coal-fired plants again.
Or raise the tonnage fees, but remember we had a cap on that because we didn't want to out-compete ourselves. We didn't want to gouge people.
So what you're telling us, basically, we have fund balance of $27,000.
Of usable money.
Usable money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usable funds.
Right. You don't want to ignore it, but sometimes it does make sense to look at the current financial resource method, which is the way we report fund balance, which is that 700.
Yeah.
It's hard to say what number you want to pay attention to. Depends
Well,
on what question.
Yeah, from our practical standpoint, in trying to come up with an operating budget, which is, actual dollars, and we need to know what's coming in through permit fees or EPA grants or whatever, so that we know how much income we're getting and then what the expenses are in terms of what we're actually paying for the employees, which are, current agency contributions to retirement, health insurance, as well as salaries. And that, from our standpoint, is what we need to concentrate on to have a balance.
And correct me, Ashley, if I'm wrong, but it looked like looking at the budgets through the years, we've been using that fund balance as a bogey to balance our projected expenses in our budget. We were using that in our budget to make us whole every year, whether we used it or not. In the planning process, that was a bogey we put in there, I'll use that term, to make it whole. So now the bogey, instead of 193, what we had in this past year, we could only use 27 going forward as a bogey. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's the cleanest way to look at it. And, and we've talked about, we don't know when those liabilities are going to come due, not likely to come due all at once, but from a planning perspective, they will come due at some point. And so planning for that future use is important.
Yeah.
So
It's
that,
important to look at those long term.
Yeah.
When you're looking at budgeting, it's much more important to focus on how much cash you have available. That $700,000 balance is much more reliable. Because the other thing is, those long-term liabilities are put together by actuarial, and those numbers can fluctuate by interest rates. There could be changes to assumptions over time, things that we don't have control over, and they can fluctuate $10,000, $15,000, $100,000 one way or the other. So you could have another 100,000 plus next year, it could be down to 50. You just never know.
it also means if those people sitting behind you should decide to retire and be eligible to collect retirement, that 700,000 will go up.
They don't look like they're ready to retire yet.
No.
So, but we also have our budget team here. Sam is here, and Sam works closely with Ashley and Hannah to assess kind of what are our projected revenues versus expenditures, looking at personnel in the current year, and to make sure that we have a process where we can make sure that we're balancing those revenues against those expenditures.
Well, I think you've answered our questions as to what these numbers mean.
It's going to help us in the budgeting process for sure. I mean, because now we have a target.
Yeah.
It's a little more realistic.
The non-current liabilities, are they based upon just the employees and their specific former employees with the air agency, or is all that a Buncombe County number that you divide out by the number of employees and allocate it out that way?
It is air quality only.
So our
So actually,
specific,
the pension amount is, the state has a report specific to air quality. Some of your other numbers, it's based on air quality staffing, so it's all air quality.
Any other questions, guys?
I think just a listening check for budgeting purposes going forward. To use that fund balance as a bogey, 27,000 is the number where it's available. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, seeing nods.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we ought to look at our budget in those terms.
Yeah.
We got a cushion of
Rather
27,000.
than some portion of 713, it's really 27.
Okay, what would the county do if we tried to triple our fees to get more income?
Well, I don't think it's just what the county do. I think it's what our constituents would do with those fees. But Ashley and I, we talked even today about fee schedules and what that process would be, and looking at that more closely. And so I think that's just a process that the county publishes their fee schedule with the budget. So by June 30th, that'll happen. And so I'm not sure if we're ready to look into those changes for this year, but certainly for future years, probably needs to be discussed.
I thought one thing that was helpful in that financial report that came out with the county was it was explaining that for the component units like the air agency and the TDA, that they have to report us separately. And it explains sort of the net position. And I thought that was helpful, that since we are a separate component unit, there is a different responsibility. Is that, would you say, Glenn, where that's how you have to report it to the state by component unit?
That's how we have to report it in our financials. Just because you're component unit, that's where you actually live on the financial statements. Other governmental activities, when we get to the net position, all kind of get lumped together. Just, I don't want to say that the focus is more on the fund accounting on those reports, but when everything gets lumped together, some of that information gets lost. You don't really know what the net position of each function of the government is. So in a way, you are reporting much more than the typical government function.
Y'all know this, but you're a unique entity in your structure and unlike any in the state. And so that's kind of one of those trade-offs that
We're a unicorn.
If we have to generate our own income, we can't ask for the county to bail us out.
you could.
So I assume Mecklenburg and Forsyth County they're operate similarly as us. They're basically one county agencies also.
No, they're actually not. They're under their county's commissioners. So the general statutes allow these local programs to be either under their county commission, or they can be under their under a separate authority, which is what we are. We're a multi-jurisdictional authority where the city and we're self-funded, but we can ask the city and the county for money if we need it. But the other two, Forsyth and Mecklenburg, they're actually true, county programs under their county commissioners. Mecklenburg is part of an agency called Land Use and Environmental Services. They have air quality inside that. Forsyth is under, it's called Environmental Affairs and Environmental Assistance and Environmental Affairs Division, and air quality is in that. But they both have their county commissioners as their governing board. And so when they, we've been having funding issues, as you guys know, for years. And so the state and local air agencies have had to go to their respective state and local authorities and actually ask for them to put some money in recent years. And so Forsyth and Mecklenburg are both getting funds from their counties now. And the state is actually getting some funds from the General Assembly now. And so that's, kind of.
That leads to another question for the county. Being an assistant county manager, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is the county interested in taking us over?
Excuse me?
Are you interested in taking over this board or this agency?
I think I'm interested in air quality continuing to provide the services that you have. We continue to work with Ashley and Joel to talk about how that can best work. So.
That's a good non-answer.
Thank you. Sorry for the bug dust questions, as I call them.
No, you're
I wanted
good.
to make sure I understood what the numbers meant.
Absolutely not. I want y'all to feel supported by our staff from a budget and finance perspective. So if you ever have any questions, just let us know. I do apologize. I do have to run. We
Go
have
for it.
No problem.
Regular
No problem.
board meeting.
Thank you.
I think we're wrapping this
Appreciate
up.
it.
Any,
Thank you for your
any
time.
final questions, guys? All right. Thanks, Tim
Thank
and Steph.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Okay, moving down toward the end. Other business. We always have a legal counsel report, Suzanne. So this is your first one.
I'm ready. So I know that you are all familiar with the Banks case. And there's been ongoing litigation in that matter. It's an overlap between there's air quality and solid waste. So Amy handled this earlier this week. I've lost track of what days with all the snow, but there has been a judgment issued. So the next step will be coming up with the money. The solid waste is going to be probably the bigger issue and the cleanup of the property.
What does that mean, a judgment issued?
There are money judgments attached to it, but essentially it gives the county the authority to clean up the property and then place a lien on the property in an effort to recoup the funds.
So do the current owners, they're affected where, does the county take their property or?
That can be an eventual outcome in order to, essentially it'll be like a foreclosure matter in order to recoup the funds.
So the judgment basically tells the owners that they have to clean up the property and stop burning trash, and that's part of it, right?
Yes. I mean, they have the ability to clean up the property. I don't know that that's a likely option as long as this matter has been ongoing. I think the most likely resolution will be the county cleaning up the property.
So for now, we just wait to see what happens if we, as far as I can.
Yeah, it'll be kind of a wait and see.
So could there be a monetary judgment that some of the funds would come back to this agency potentially in the future? Since we're talking about budget here.
I'm just looking, I think the judgment from the air quality was about $3,500.
Okay.
And that goes to
moves the needle.
that goes to the school board. There's an
That's right.
investigative fee
That's
that we get
right.
to keep, but it's only a few $100s.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
But
All right.
I guess for us, for practical purposes, if we continue to get complaints, I don't think that, I mean, that's not, I don't know if we're supposed to continue to document violations or just let legal know if we get any more complaints. We haven't really been contacted so much lately. So basically, I think we would just let you guys know if we keep having problems.
We have a couple of these matters right now, and it's a lengthy process to, especially when it's going in to get the cleanup started.
Well, thanks very much. That's a huge help. That one's been causing a lot of problems for the neighbors and a lot of time for us too. So we really appreciate that the county took that action.
Any questions for Suzanne? Any others? Okay. Advisory committee, we're kind of taking a hiatus, aren't we, Ned?
Yeah, we're waiting for Ashley to request some assistance.
I know, I'm sorry. I told Ned at the last meeting that I would get an appointment on the schedule, and I have not done it. So I will reach out to the advisory committee and try to get something scheduled. We typically try to do the months the board doesn't meet, so it might try to set something up for, if not February, April at least.
Probably April, with
Probably
everything
April.
going on.
Yeah.
You still got all the rules and
I'm
stuff.
trying to get through the rules. I think they'll be helpful. We can ask them to help with some of the rules that are different.
There you go. Okay. Board meeting schedule, next meeting is March 12th. I know Carl is getting ready to celebrate his 40th anniversary, going on a big cruise, and very excited for him on that. So he's not going to be able to make it, but can everybody else make the 12th of March? Okay, so we'll hold that. Any announcements? You know, that's something, right?
I have one, and that is that there is a wood stove safety day at the Barnesville Fire Department on Saturday after the fire chief's breakfast from 11 to 1. And the Full Circle Forestry Collective and Barnesville Area Resiliency Network are hosting that. They have a FEMA grant, and they're giving away wood stove safety kits. And we're going to go have a table with our BurnWise EPA, you know, how to emit less smoke when you heat with wood. And they're going to have weatherization folks and some people that do, you know, wildfire mitigation and different services for the community. So trying to get the word out about that. I might send out an email blast to our agenda list if you see that. Please pass it on to anybody that has a wood stove and would like a free kit with wood stove and all that stuff.
Anybody else? Other announcements? I'm assuming we don't have any public comment because I didn't see anybody sign up. So we'll dispense with that, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Motion by Gary.
Second.
Second by Ned. We're adjourned.
Aye.
Just